Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire, while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Rob Verhelst, better known as Fireman Rob. Got a great guest today. The experience of this individual is unbelievable. I'm going to just kind of read you off some of the things, from a Thames medic with the FBI to the team doctor of Garmin Pro Cycling Team. He's a board certified doctor in both emergency medicine and emergency medical services. Dr. Sovndal, it is great to have you on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, there's a lot of things to go through, and especially in challenging times like these, words from an individual like yourself are such a huge thing. And, you talk in your book, and it's a great book. You can go to drsovndal.com. It's SOVNDAL.com. You talk in your book about a lot of different things, like nothing could prepare you for the harsh reality of becoming a compassionate human and working as an ER doc. Tell us a little more about just the basis of the book.
Yeah, so the basis of Fragile really was that life is fragile. And it's crazy right now that that's the title of the book. And now there's a picture of me with wearing my mask. I didn't plan on having it come out during a pandemic, but it really does drive the point home. And that really what I learned being a doctor, being in emergency medicine and EMS, is you see these moments that just change people's lives, right? And it's a split second moment that everything turns on a dime. And to understand that is there for all of us, meaning we just do not know what's going to come tomorrow. And that might sound really scary. And it was scary when I started to have that realization at first. It took a lot of work to kind of get out of the fear of seeing that life is fragile. But if we can get through it, if we can get through that kind of fear of it, it's really about resiliency, because those experiences, those critical times in our lives are really what opens up the rest of our lives. It allows me to fully love and be connected with my family. And so, I wouldn't trade all that stuff in. You need to experience it all. It's a full spectrum.
And I love that it's, being an ER doc, it's a very dynamic environment. And, a lot of people don't understand that. They have their routines that they go through, each week. And being able to read this book and understand in greater detail, like these are high level stress moments, but what can they take away for their lives that maybe seem routine?
Well, I think that the funny thing about routine and working in the ER is I used to joke, I have to get my kids to their daycare or to their babysitter in the morning and get them to school. And then I would get to my shift and I could sit down and relax. Once I arrived in the ER, I'm like, okay, I know how to handle this zone. It's harder for me to handle getting the kids to school, getting them lunch and all that stuff. So I think that the reality of it is that, we all have moments in our life that are fundamental impact moments. And those are, what we see in the ER a lot. When you're coming to the ER, a patient might remember everything about that moment because it's very crucial for them, because it's an important moment when they're sick or hurt, right? And that's our routine. That is our work day, is seeing those patients one after another. And so you see these two different perspectives. And early on in my training, one of my attendings had taught me, he said, remember to breathe. It's not your emergency, it's their emergency. And really that takes a lot of training, right? To be calm in a critical moment. And I think that we can all actually learn from that experience a little bit. There are times in our lives where we need to be the foundation and the solid person for others, and taking a moment to breathe, to step back, to observe the situation and say, hey, right at this moment, I'm okay. I'm here to help, someone else that's having a crisis.
I love that. And, in an article that you wrote for Thrive Global, you highlighted 4 things that you can, that we can learn from an ER doc in dealing with tragedy. And you covered that first one of breathe, but this next one I love. It's don't focus on the why, focus on your why. Tell me more about that one.
Yeah, I think we get so caught up in this world of, superficial truths and important things that aren't necessarily important. We feel like they're so important in the moment, but they're really not. And we're just caught up in this rush wheel of getting to the next thing, getting the next paper published, getting the next job, making a bigger paycheck. And all of these things, they seem so important until we have that moment of impact, that moment where someone in our life is drastically affected by illness, or we're in a car accident, and we suddenly realize that that isn't what is important. What is important is, the people at home, my wife when I get home, kissing my kids goodnight, watching the moon rise, watching the sunset, like all of these things, that is what is important. And that's really what I'm trying to get at there. We focus so much on unimportant things that really figure out why are you doing what you're doing, and what is your fundamental why? And even more important, who is your who in your life that you need to connect with?
That's such a great statement. And, I want to dive a little deeper into your TEMS, which is tactical medicine, when you were with the FBI, because that's such a critical thing. Because if you think about, most of the people don't know what TEMS medic is, but, you are the life link in essence for those individuals that are breaching the doors and everything like that. Tell me a little bit more about being a TEMS medic or teaching TEMS medics, that philosophy, because you're going into an environment where you don't have control, but you're helping those who do.
Yeah, I think that, I kind of fell into the TEMS medic thing. I was on a rotation when I was training, and I picked up a magazine that had a cover article about TEMS, tactical medicine. And I was like, that looks kind of cool. And then I had some buddies as well who were law enforcement officers, and then one who was an FBI agent. And really, I kind of started talking to him about it. And this FBI agent had come from school with me. We had studied together. We had trained martial arts together. And he was a PhD in biochem. And he decided that he didn't like his work as a biochemist, and he became an FBI agent. And he was like, yeah, that works great. And so through this article and me talking to him, I started to say, hey, maybe this would be something that would be interesting to me as an ER doctor. And so for my elective, during residency, we have elective 6 weeks. I presented to my attendings that I would like to do tactical medicine, and they were like, "What's that?" And I said, "Here's what I have planned. I'm going to go to, Gunsight Academy in Arizona, which is a gunfighting school essentially. I'm going to go to Fort Detrick in Maryland, which is the United States Army's medical bioweapons training facility. I'm going to go do these 3 different tactical medicine courses. I'm going to do this other elective at a hospital." And so I put this elective together, and they were like, "Yeah, that's fine." And so in this 6-week period, I basically was traveling to all these different, training facilities. And that was my start. That was how I got into tactical medicine. And then my contact with the FBI agent, he said, "Well, come be our tactical medic." And that's how it started.
Wow. It is a stressful environment, because you're leapfrogging in essence, and helping those individuals that need help, while you're in a austere environment.
Yeah.
Looking at the next step that you kind of highlighted, the next thing that you highlighted was building. I like this one. Building character sucks, especially when you're building character.
Yeah.
It's so
true. It's so true. I mean, this is like fundamental for me, is that, I am always, every day, I try to focus on being good at my job. And I think that it's extremely important to like really be mindful that you're spending time trying to be, great at what you do. And I have this whole, talk that I give about 300 seconds. And that's why our training group's called 300 Training, is that we focus on 300 seconds a day to your greatness. That's such a little time commitment, but it's a commitment that so many of us don't do. And really, there's no excuse not to commit to that 300 seconds. Because if you come home late at night and you're like, "I'm tired," the extra 5 minutes doesn't make you any less tired. It's just a mental game. And so really, that building character thing is part of this, and that, every day you have to focus on getting better, and every day you have to make yourself a little uncomfortable. And that's why building character sucks, is because you don't get to build character for free. You don't get to just say that I was building character. You have to actually suffer through it a little bit. And so That's what I urge everyone to do is just make yourself uncomfortable every day. You got to build that character every day. And it does suck. It sucks for everybody. But that's how you get better.
I love it. I love it. And this is, highlighted in that book, Fragile. Everybody can go on there and drsovndal.com. It's Sovndal. You can get your own book. I also wanted to highlight what you were talking about with that 300 training. It's a training group for first responders. It's the number 300training.com. Tell me more about that group.
I mean, that really came about just from what I do. I do a lot of medical direction for different agencies, and they're always looking for education. And we wanted to offer high level education that was fun, that wasn't uptight, that, is really practical. So, for example, you can learn things from a textbook that they'll say, hey, we're going to work on airway today. Let's talk about lemon rule. And then they'll name the mnemonics and they'll have you repeat the mnemonic back, right? And you're like, I would never do this in real life, right? So really what our focus is how do I make you perform in the moment as an EMS provider, as a doctor? What we want to do is save lives, right? And so I don't care what you can recite from a textbook or how good you do on a test. I really want you to be great in your practice in what you're doing. And so really what 300 does is it just focuses on fundamentals. And we really focus on three pillars for everything. There's three different things that you need to be great at to do your job really well. The first is you need to have a strong, textbook based knowledge base of information. So that's the first pillar that you need to have. You then need to have technical skill. You need to be technically sound, manipulating your tools at whatever you're doing, whether you're a firefighter or a police officer or the EMT. You need to be able to operate your tools. And then the third pillar is you need to have scene control. You need to be able to control the situation so that you can do your job. And really kind of breaking it down to those three pillars, we focus on practicality of how do we get the job done? Because our goal isn't to just show up at a patient's side and get them to the ER. Our goal is to get that patient home to their family. And so that means that we need to do our job really well just to get them to the ER. And then we need to set the ER up for success, just like the ER has to set the OR up for success, and the OR has to set the ICU up for success. That's how we get patients home. And so it's really a focus on that, on taking a patient from the moment of impact to getting them home and doing it with real practical information.
I love that because it truly talks about how fragile, like you are saying in your book, how fragile everything is, because it is chaos that we're trying to make into something that's functional and something that's going to be efficient.
Yeah, and that's it, that you just said, the chaos that we're talking about, that's in the title of the book, right? So the book is called Fragile: Beauty and Chaos, Grace and Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. And where that title came from is it was my struggle with what I was talking about. I was ready to go be a hero, right? You sign up, you
Right.
go to med school, you're going to be a firefighter, you're going to work on an ambulance. All of us want to be heroes, even if we don't admit it. We're doing this job because we want to step in when someone's in trouble, right? And the problem is that you have so many interactions where you fail, where you're not the hero because it didn't work out right. And I use that analogy of baseball, right? You step to the plate so many times and you have a lot of strikeouts for every home run. And the funny thing is that I don't even remember the home runs. I only worry about the strikeouts. And so
Right.
trying to deal with that, I thought I was going to be a hero. And now I'm dealing, with this feeling of despair and loss because I couldn't affect a patient. And I saw how much it affected them and their family. That really, I struggled with that for a long time. And I was depressed for a period of time. And I use the analogy of it's like a black hole. It's those emotions start to suck you in and it makes you negative and it starts pulling you deep where you can't escape. And really, it can be too much. And that's why we see a lot of PTSD and we see a lot of depression and suicide in care providers, which is really a goal of mine is to help prevent that from happening and help people be more resilient. But, from my personal experience, I felt that struggle. And if you can avoid getting sucked in, though, if you can sit right on the event horizon of that black hole and you can come back,
Right.
it actually opens up your perspective to everything. And I wouldn't trade at all the person I was back when I started this 20 years ago to the person I am now from what I've seen. And I've had a lot of tears and a lot of suffering because of it. But man, how much I enjoy every moment of life, I couldn't have that any other way.
Right. And that's, you led perfectly right up into that last thing that you were talking about that you can learn in dealing with tragedy is loosening the grip. And you tell a great story about a little boy named Samuel. You want to give us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, the stories in Fragile, Fragile is not a book of stories, meaning it's not like short stories about the ER. I don't want people to think that's what it's about. Really, what Fragile's about is what we've been talking about, that, there is beauty in chaos and there's grace in tragedy and there's hope that comes from this to help us move forward. And each of these stories is slipping into this bigger picture. If I could show you the outline, you would see all these funny color coded lines, tying the book together. But Fragile started
That's like
Fragile.
Spider.
Yeah, exactly. Fragile did start with the Samuel story, and that's obviously not his real name, but Samuel was a
Right.
boy that I took care of, and I struggled, taking care of, these kids. And when you have a kid that you lose in the ER, it's it takes a piece of your soul away, is the way I describe it, and it's very difficult because in the ER that I was working in, there's one ER doctor, so even though you have these bad things happen, the ER is still open for business, right? And so you don't really get a timeout to go say, I want to go home now. I want to do an after action breakdown of this. You still have to work. And my struggle with that is how that chapter came about. Is one night I was, upset about it, and I was like, I'm just going to write the story about this. And that's the beginning of Fragile. It was the story of Samuel.
Oh wow. Yeah, and it's interesting because you speak right to my heart too, because I feel exactly what you're talking about, because it's so hard to loosen that grip on something that has taken so much of your life, like in essence, like what you're saying, taking your soul. Um, you know, you also worked, now going back to a lighter side, you also worked as a Garmin professional cycling team doctor. How was
Yeah,
that?
it was great. I raced bikes in college, and I pursued that for some time, and I met a lot of people racing bikes. And then when I became a doctor, I still had those connections, and a team needed a doctor for a particular bike race for the U.S. Pro Challenge, so they had asked if I could do that, and I said yes, and then that worked out well, and the team started to grow, and pretty soon it was a UCI, a full blown professional team. So it was kind of Forrest Gump a little bit, in that I met the people, and then we became big. But yeah, I found myself then being the team doctor for this cycling team, and it was great because you spend a lot of time in Europe. Cycling is essentially a
Yep.
European sport, so I've done, I think, 8 Tour de France's and Tour Italy's, and had a team. We won the Tour Italy one year. We've had top tens in the Tour
Wow.
de France with Christian Van der Velde, and I got to meet those riders and observe them being great. That's a lot of where my greatness, approach comes from, is seeing these pro athletes and what they can do, and how they push their body, and it's just truly, amazing to get to watch.
And you look at the Tour de France, and like a human body's not meant to do that.
Yeah,
It's a crazy thing to watch that. As a team doctor, it's got to be intense for you, because you have to monitor all the things that are going on with these athletes' bodies, while at the same time making sure that they're at the high premium, top of their game to be able to win the tour.
yeah,
What
for sure.
what do you,
I mean,
what does that look like?
yeah, it's tricky because the Tour de France is not healthy, right? It's not healthy to race your bike that hard for 3 weeks um, in a row and do that many miles. And the first piece of it is, observing them race up a mountain, like when you're in the team car and they're climbing up the Alpe d'Huez, right? And you're watching them ride their bike, and the speed at which they're going, and like heat is coming off their body and steam, and they're just a machine that it's amazing. Like, it is amazing to me to watch, because you're like, that is truly perfection of like the human body working the best. But to get to your question, it's tricky because it's not healthy, right? And they are at red line, and they're at red line to win this race, so it is a fine line, meaning that if they go a little bit faster or they go a little bit harder, they're going to get hurt, they're going to blow, they're going to have all these problems, right? And so you really are trying
Right.
to just straddle that line of, where is your engine tachometer and where can it stay for this 3 week race? And obviously keeping them in the fight, right? Because it's a big emotional roller coaster as well, meaning good days and bad days. And so I feel part of being a team doctor is being a psychologist as well, because you have to keep them motivated. You have to worry that they're eating right, what we eat. at the first week of the tour matters for the last week of the tour. So really it's a chore as well, getting them hydrated and sugar in their body and food in their body. So you're kind of monitoring, all of that stuff. In addition to then the fact that, these guys are riding their bikes at 60 miles an hour down the Dolomites or down the Alps. And, there are bad accidents. And, it's funny because, I don't think I have PTSD, but I, think about PTSD a lot. And, the sound of bikes crashing and the sound of like frames breaking, like it's a really, memorable sound that kind of gives me pause and the creeps. And people who haven't heard it, you're lucky. But it's, kind of hearing that action, and then you have to go pick up the carnage that happened because of that. It's pretty crazy.
It's insane. And, I want to get back to that 300 seconds per day, because I love that philosophy. 300 seconds per day to greatness. You look at your life and you look at the different things that you have to do on a daily basis. What are some of the things that you do, like in that 300 seconds, to be able to make your life better, to be able to move forward?
Yeah, well, let me frame it. The 300 seconds is personal, meaning it was a tool that I used.
Right.
And so when we talk about getting to greatness, you're going to need to commit much more than 300 seconds a day to greatness, right? We talk about Malcolm Gladwell and 10,000 hours and all of those things. All that stuff holds true.
Right.
The problem is that we have that end goal focus, and then we get so lost in the minutia during the day that we get off track, and we feel like we're just off track. So we never kind of get back on track. And that's where the 300 seconds comes in. It is a tool to get you on track. It's a tool to test whether you're being weak-minded or whether you're in the game. And really, again, when I come back to that 300 seconds, I say that's 5 minutes. So no matter what's going on in the day, if you think of the 300 seconds and you say, I can't do it today, you've suffered a defeat for the day, right? When you look in the mirror, there's no hiding. You said, I couldn't do my 300 seconds because I was too tired. That's you giving in, because there's no reason that you can't do the 300 seconds. Even when have a busy shift at work, you have to deal with the kids, you have to pay your taxes, you have to, do all these things, you can find the 5 minutes. And really honing in on that 5 minutes of quiet brain time, committing to what your end goal is. I mean, that just is so honest that if you say, I have an end goal that I want to be a doctor, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be an EMT, whatever your end goal is, I want to play the guitar, right? If you truly say that I want to do that, then you should commit that 300 seconds a day to it. And so what I do, I fall off all the time, meaning there are days when I do the 300 seconds. But what I do is I look in the mirror and I go, man, you're being a tool today. You're weak. Like the next day I have a mirror test and I tell myself that you got to get back on it. And what do? I don't do 600 seconds. I do 300 seconds. Like you just got to get back in the saddle and do it again. And so the 300 seconds changes for me, meaning that I use it for minor goals as well as for bigger goals. So sometimes, I really want to focus on the guitar. And so I'll say, for this next week or this next 2 weeks, I'm going to do my 300 seconds on playing a certain chord progression or learning a new song or doing something, right? And you'll be amazed that if you just commit that 300 seconds, how much better you get. I'm always was amazed in residency, you would be afraid on rounds that you're going to get yelled at. Like some attendings were not the nicest to me. And, really knowledge was protection. And I had a senior resident say, just read every day. Like every day, pick up the book and read at least a little bit every day, from whatever rotation you're on. And I started to do that. And I was absolutely blown away by the number of times that something I had just read for 5 minutes was what I was getting pimped on in rounds. And you would come up with the answer, right? They would yell at you, you would give them the answer. Yep. And then they would be like, you're no fun. Let me pick on somebody else, right? And it was total protection. And everyone out there that's listening to this podcast, whatever you do, I would again push you to just read a little bit on what that excellence that you're looking to every day, because it comes up all the time that it helps out in your current life.
I love that, because it is, you hit it on the head. It is personal. And if you miss a day, and it's kind of funny, always on training days, it's like, oh, I missed an hour yesterday, I'll do 2 hours today. But really it's creating that habit. Like you're saying, I love it. Yeah.
It's the long game. It's the long game, right? The habit, like you said.
Oh, by far, by far. And you're a father, you're a husband, and you do this great podcast, Match on a Fire, Medicine and More, with your wife.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love the banter between the two of you. And now is she a paramedic? Is
Yeah,
that
she's a paramedic firefighter.
okay? And so, tell me a little bit more about that podcast because I listened to a few episodes and I loved the back and forth because it's funny because I have a wife as well, and so it's like it's great conversation.
Yeah, I mean she is made for she's made for TV and podcast because she's beautiful and her voice is great. And I always joke that I need her on the podcast because people really like listening to her voice. My voice, you can take it or leave it. When we first started the podcast, a doctor friend called me and he was like, "Oh yeah, the podcast was great." He's like, "Steph's voice sounds really good. Your voice sounds different. It sounds funny." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a dude and she's like a beautiful woman." Like her voice sounds great to me too. I think I agree with you. So yes, it's great because the purpose of that again was to have real life discussions on, what we deal with in the field and how we take care of patients. And we felt like it was a great interaction to have a paramedic talking with a doctor because we're trying to do the same thing, but we certainly approach things differently and from different perspectives. And that was really the fundamental impetus behind the Match on a Fire.
I love it. I love it. You can go to Dr. Sovndal, SOVNDAL.com and also see the podcast as well as the book. All right. So I like to end the segments all the same way. I have some questions for you. I don't give them to you prior to because I want to get those truthful answers coming out here.
Okay.
Here's the first one. What is one thing you haven't done but is outside of your comfort zone?
Parachuting.
Oh, now
Parachuting, skydiving, yeah.
Okay. I love it.
I'm afraid of heights, man. I overcome my fear of heights, like with the fire department and stuff, but I do not like it up there. And so my sons want to go skydiving, and I'm like, let's wait.
Well, I think it's one of those things you just got to do. I've done it a few times. It's pretty fun once you do it once.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is I actually have a lot of quotes that I like, but I particularly do like no fear, no surprise, no hesitation, no doubt, and that's Miyamoto Musashi, who was a very famous samurai. He actually authored the book The Five Rings, which is a famous tactical type book.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Here's the tough one, and you'll like this one. If you could pick to have coffee with 3 other people, they can be deceased or alive, at a firehouse table. So in other words, nothing is off the table when you're at a firehouse table. Who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think let's see, I would probably choose Neil Armstrong because he's my hero.
That's a good one.
I would choose Jesus.
Because
I'd want to get a read on it myself.
There you go.
And the third one would be I probably would choose my grandfather.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's a good 3 right there.
Yeah, it would be an interesting conversation between the 3 of them.
Especially after some coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, here's the last is a rapid round. All it is 2 things. All you got to do is say one of them. It is not a psychology test. It is just for fun. All right, here we go. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Soup or salad?
Salad.
McDonald's or Taco Bell?
Taco Bell.
Nice.
Yeah.
Camping or hotel?
Camping.
Fly or drive?
Fly for sure.
Sleep in late or wake up early?
I wake up early.
Run or walk?
Run. Definitely don't walk. Hate walking.
I can't tell with all of your accolades in your life. You don't like to go slow.
Yeah.
Partly sunny or partly cloudy?
Partly cloudy.
Fire or water?
Fire.
Use a porta potty or continue to run or drive to the next physical bathroom?
Not porta potty.
Attaboy.
I was a bike racer, man. You become very tight with porta potties.
I didn't want to put nature in there like a tree,
Yeah.
but that would have been easy. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke for sure.
All right. Go big or go home?
go big.
All right, Dr. Sovndal, it has been a pleasure to have you on today. People can go to drsovndal.com. It's SOVNDAL.com and find your book as well as your podcast. I will definitely have you on again because I know there'll be more books coming out from you. But thank you so much for coming on today.
That was great having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Fireman Rob out.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.